छोटा कर ले थोड़ा छोटा fine okay right hello can I start? Yeah. Hello everyone, welcome to Sleepy Classes. Today we're going to talk about the DAF-2. First of all, a very all of you who have cleared, congratulations from my side. It is perhaps the most nervous area of the whole UPSC preparation. When you clear your mains and you're waiting for your interview, most of us have a lot of jittery, nervous thought processes going around in our lives during that phase. I would like, I would advise most of you to be very calm, right? That's one thing that I would obviously do. First of, as I've said, let's start talking about the DAF, right? The form, right? So let's go down. Okay, the first, if you think, I think DAF1, most of you have already have filled because that's all goes with the mains form itself. But I'll just go through what areas you'll have to prepare in the interview, right? So the first thing which normally they focus on is your place of birth or the district where your father or your mother belongs to. So some questions have to be prepared based on district level data, census, sex ratio. If you come from a district which is having a low sex ratio, if you come from a district where there are a lot of floods there, basically the last 1 year, if there were a lot of COVID cases in your district, in your area, all those things can be an area which they would talk about in the interview. Right, that's one thing I will talk about. The others, obviously, they will focus upon your graduation, right? They will talk about at least a list of like 30 questions we normally ask everybody to prepare on your graduation, right? That's one thing I would always encourage people to do. Before we talk about other things, if you have any higher qualification, let's say you're an MBA from some college, or you have done your MA, or you're doing your PhD, or you're a doctor who's done your MD or something, so they tend to go for that, and they expect a level of expertise there. So that is one area they want to go. Normally, if you're an MBA, they go for organizational behavior questions, leadership questions. They like to talk about what are the various theories of leadership, and they'll go talk about those. Okay. Then obviously we talk about if you have any national level sports. If you have, that's something they'll talk about. Let's say I'm a national level player in badminton, and obviously have not been playing for a while now. But what happens is that they will ask you questions. They'll compare Sania Nehwal to PV Sindhu. If they're interested in cricket, they talk about that. They'll talk about reverse swing and so on. If you're into painting, again, same thing. They'll expect a technical language as well, and not just a superficial language, thought process, but in-depth analysis. So let's say I do painting, and I might not be very well aware of the various types of paintings being done by other people, or but I need to be a person who has a very clear logical exposition of thoughts. So there, we talk about the fact that in paintings, you should be you should be very clear that in UPSC preparation, what we read about painting. And now I have to actually talk about it in a different way. So they might say, okay, what is the influence of European painting or company art on modern India? They might talk about Abhinavanath Tagore and even the recent painters, M.F. Hussain and so on. Some painting which has been sold for a very high amount, they go for that. So we need to be very careful about that. Let's say you have some hobbies like, let's say meditation. Okay. Again, they will talk about what are the types of meditation, what does meditation mean to you, have you heard of mindfulness, what type of meditation do you chant, what kind of chant do you belong to any sect? So the questions basically go like a binary tree in some ways, I would say. We have to obviously have the questions, debates will be what do you think, how is religion different from spirituality, are you a spiritual person? Now here the thing is, you might be all those things, but at the same time you would not have the kind of response that might be required. Okay, you might not have a written answer. So normally what we would be doing, we would be creating or helping with a list of questions in these areas with various hobbies, let's say cricket, football, painting, volleyball, so on. That's sports. Then dancing, right? What different types of dances? So classical dances vis-a-vis the Western style of dancing, which these people are doing. So there's a, and some people even like to do stand-up comedy, right? That's also there. So different genres are there. And so we need to prepare something like 30 to 40 questions there, okay? And we would be helping you in that, right? So that's what our phone calls will be used for, and our offline discussions. If you have any questions, you can do obviously post in the chat right now, and I will try to take them up if any of you is watching right now. Okay. Any hobbies you have? Okay, let's say a few students of mine, they also said the hobby hai hi nahi, kya likhe? Okay, so some people say, okay, let's put walking, right? Some people. So again, you should be, what time do you go for a walk? Or how does it help you? What do you think while you walk? Okay. Again, there can be a list of questions there itself. So it doesn't matter that what hobby you write, but what is important is the number, of questions you prepare on it, because they are bound to ask. Remember that they also go for a walk, right? So they'll ask you, where do you go for a walk? They might even talk about, so let's say if you're in Chandigarh, let's say you go to Sukhna Lake. They'll talk about the fact that Sukhna Lake has been closed for so long. What do you do when that happened? So you said, so I used to walk in my balcony, right? And so on. Those kind of, soft questions are being asked there. So this is something I would say that you need to be very, very aware of, that it doesn't matter what you write, they will grill you, and so you have to be prepared. Okay, so give adequate time, read up, there's enough resources. Let's say, if I say I play badminton, I should be aware of all the rules. It should not be I'm not aware. So that's something, you should be very well, interested in that, because what they look for a depth of interest. So one of the qualities that UPSC looks for is variety and depth of interest, right? So they'll look for a person who has, a lot of depth of interest, and where to find it better than in your hobby. Because you might dislike the subject you're studying, right? I have so many of my friends, they dislike the subjects they actually cleared with, but at the end of the day, they had other hobbies which they were extremely passionate about. So one of my friends, he likes to read a lot of books, he likes to play tennis, but at the same time, obviously, he didn't like physics as his optional, but he still scored well. So that can always be the case. So let's say you cannot answer a lot of questions on physics maybe, but you are able to answer question on tennis, you're passionate about, you can compare Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, you can talk about the, what previous era legends were, Bjorn Borg, John McEnroe, and how they're different, the rackets, how they have made a difference. So those kind of, qualitative and quantitative questions, these have to be answered in a very balanced way, right? So that's the other criteria we say in UPSC. So there is a balance of judgment. So that's another thing that we would say that a UPSC interview candidate needs to be very, very focused upon. So till now, we've talked about three things, as I've said, logical exposition of thoughts. So for that, you need to prepare questions and written answers to them. So that is how I would like you all to prepare. The next, obviously, I talked about variety and depth of interest. I said, and that's normally judged in your hobby, because for your hobby, nobody pays you anything. Hence, that is something you have to talk about. The other is, obviously, you have to be balanced in your judgment about things. You cannot have a one-sided view on things. You obviously, as a civil servant, you'll have people coming to, trying to influence you in a certain way. You need to be balanced all the time. So that's another thing. Okay, so before I think we go ahead, I think a lot of you would have your own preferences in various zones. So that's something that you have to focus upon. All right, so let's take this already filled thing. So first question is whether you want your home state, that is, let's say I'm coming from Chandigarh. So do I want it to be my home cadre? So that's something has to be decided. So this is something a little tricky. Sometimes you have a lot of seats in your home cadre. Sometimes you have seats in your don't have seats in your home cadre. So that's another thing which you have to maybe consider, right? Sometimes. So let's say we start with obviously zone 1 as a preference, and let's say I'm from Rajasthan. I love Rajasthan. So here I filled Rajasthan as 1, and then I'm okay with Rajasthan, Haryana. So I filled at 2, and then 3 at Agmut, and so on. Right? I filled like this. Now, please be very, very clear about this fact that if you don't get Rajasthan, let's say my rank is 42, and Rajasthan already, somebody from Rajasthan has also scored rank 27. So I'll not get Rajasthan. Okay. So what will happen? I'll go to zone 2. So I have to be very careful about this, that I fill the next one as some place which I really want to go to. So here, obviously, I filled Uttar Pradesh, right? Let's say you say, okay, sir, I'll go to Jharkhand because I think Ranchi is a wonderful place to stay. Totally fine. Okay. Normally, the decision, let's say in IIS, are based upon capitals. If the capital is good, normally people like to stay there, because after your DCCP, you're bound to stay in the capital for 25 years or so, or even after your retirement. So here, Uttar Pradesh, so Lucknow is totally fine. Then, right, we have Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra. Now, there's a huge debate in this zone, I would say. People say Maharashtra is a wonderful cadre. Mumbai is a lovely place to stay. On the other hand, Madhya Pradesh, we normally say it's the old Indian, respect which is there for the civil servant. So Rajasthan is one. I was still UP, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh. The respect we have for a civil servant is amazing. So obviously we try to fill them first, and that's what we have done here. Gujarat is lovely. A lot of my students last year had filled Gujarat as zone 3 and Gujarat as 1, right? I think with Narendra Modi, this is a hot choice as well. Then zone 4, somebody had, so we filled Sikkim, but you can also fill West Bengal. Sikkim is very, very beautiful. So people who stay there say Gangtok is a lovely place to stay. Schooling is also not bad because of those boarding schools which are there. But obviously, this is the zone people tend to want to avoid, but obviously you can't. So here we go West Bengal, and then obviously Assam, Meghalaya. Then zone 5, obviously Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Karnataka. I normally would suggest here Karnataka to be 1 or Telangana to be 1. So Hyderabad and Bangalore are lovely places to stay. So put Karnataka 1 or Telangana 1. That's my preference. You might have others. So that's there. Tamil Nadu also. So again, I think zone 5 is totally fine. Any state would do, right? They're wonderful places to work, most of them. And obviously even afterwards, because they are coastal areas and there'll be a lot of economic growth and a lot of opportunities for you to work in the various areas as a civil servant or an IS or IPS even for that matter. Okay. For the IPS, this is a little different. Okay. So you have to obviously understand this. There's a subtlety between IPS and IS. So you'll go for areas where there's a commissionerate system. Okay. So Maharashtra in zone 3 will become more interesting for you. UT cadre may be a better area, for a IPS person. That is what, normally the commissionerate system, if there's in a state, it's more preferable. Okay. So though, in this form we have filled it randomly, but I would suggest that, Agmut cadre can be filled. It's a very good cadre for IPS officers. Rest can remain pretty much same, but Maharashtra is seen to be a good cadre for IPS as well because of the commissionerate system, a lot of power. And I think you would have heard of the recent things that happened in Maharashtra with Parambir Singh, right? So I would say that tells you kind of power that he hold in Maharashtra also. Any questions? I think if you have any question, do type in the chat. You can even email us, right? If in the home cadre or IPS, you have your own personal doubts. A lot of you would have your own doubts in this especially, right? So if you have any, do email us, right, for that, and we'll set up a call for that with you. Okay, then obviously the order of preference in our services and posts. Now this is okay, everybody might be a little clear about what they want to fill in IS, IPS, IFS, IRS. The first 4 are pretty much sorted in most cases. So let's say I fill IS as 1. So some of you might like IFS. So somebody might ask me, so what's the difference between IPS and IAS? So, or IAS, why, so I want to become an IPS. So I say that totally fine, right? You can totally choose that, and a lot of my friends have done that. But IS will have a lot of expansionary area to work after the DCCP ends. So first 10 years, I remember talking to the former DGP of West Bengal, right, while I was there. So he said, that idea is that in the first 10 years of your life as an IPS officer, they're wonderful. But after that, there are very few posts which actually make you influence, the lives of people at large. So that's very narrow, in IPS. On the other hand, in IAS, there are lots of posts, lots of areas you can work in, and you still always will have department charges which are having a lot of influence and will actually make a difference to the people at large. So again, IPS, that this is a toss-up. So some people say, why not IFS? So I say IFS is a wonderful service. So if I across 10 years, when I've talking to various people and my friends in IFS, so their personalities have improved so much. Okay, across time, they've been reading, they've been exposed. So the kind of exposure you get in IFS is a lot more. So here, somebody who is like wants to stay abroad, is like an intellectual, wants to study, wants to read books, want to meet people, right, who will make him grow as a personality. IFS is a wonderful life, that's for sure. Then obviously, some people say that I like to stay in certain cities. I don't want to go in the areas, right? I don't want, so IPS nahi. So I say totally fine. Choose the revenue services. That's one of them, right? So that's there. After that, a lot of people choose custom excise. That's there, right? And then audit accounts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is pretty much set, right? After that, here railway traffic used to be our favorite service during that time. Now obviously this has changed, and across, I don't know this time around whether how many posts are there, we'll have to check. But again, railways seem to be good services. But some friends of mine, they said that they want to stay in a city. Okay, they don't want to be posted in some random places. So the Delhi-based services are there. So what are the Delhi-based services? One of the choices obviously is the civil accounts, right? The other obviously is international trade service, corporate law, right? These services are Delhi-based. Okay, so you don't need to go anywhere else. You can stay your rest of your life in Delhi, and people like that. Okay, and then obviously there is the Delhi this Group B service. So there's a debate. That's I want to actually work on the field. So there, people normally say that okay, after revenue or audit accounts, you fill this one. That is the civil services, Group B services in Delhi, Andaman, Lakshadweep, Daman, Diu, Dadar, Nagar Haveli. So this is what we do, right? And obviously police also, that can be filled. So these two services can be your 7th or 8th choice instead of railway traffic. So that's a toss-up, and that's a personal call, I would say. Right, Pondicherry civil services, normally there is no, we have to check. Do one thing, do check how many seats are there of each service. Sometimes what happens, you will not have any seats for ordnance factories, or you will not have any seats for Pondicherry civil services. So that's is there. So this is something that you have to be account for also while filling the form. Right, so this is there. Even if you don't have this, so still, right, the form which I'm actually discussing is pretty decent. Okay, so there is another Delhi-based service which I didn't talk about, Indian Information Service. This is basically Doordarshan, All India Radio and all that. They are director level post, assistant director level post there. So again, Delhi-based service again. Basically, civil accounts, then obviously information service, trade and corporate law are Delhi-based. So people want to stay there, so that's fine. Obviously, there's one service I would like to recommend. That's the Indian Defence Estate Service. This is a wonderful service. You have the same powers as a DC, but in the cantonment, and you'll always deal with army officers. So it's pretty nice for you, I would say. A good life. So that's there. Defense accounts is the same. Again, good service to go through, right? So these are, then there's IPPT, TAF and Indian Postal Service. So this is on the field, on the ground service again. Okay, both are extremely good services. Deputations are there all over, right? And Postal Services has a very, very deep reach, I would say. So again, this can also be considered in case you want to rank. Any questions you have again about these services, you can email us and we will talk about them in detail. Okay, so with that, I think we have discussed in brief what all services and cadres you can actually talk about. If you have any questions, do ask, right? And one thing I would like you to focus upon is your extracurricular activities and your interests and hobbies. So let's start with what I had. So I used to play chess, and I was a national level player during my high school. So there, obviously, I should be able to link decision making and chess and decision making in as a civil servant. And I should be obviously, if my answers are more linked to the way actually I think in chess, that would impress people. That I just don't do my hobby. I don't just play it. I also apply it to my real world. So that kind of integration of various things you do, is also good at the end of the day. But obviously, at the same time, you might not. So obviously, they might, let's say if you play chess, what can be the kind of questions? So one is obviously the number of, minimum number of moves that is needed to mate somebody. So that's another. So the trick questions can also be asked. Same if you play cricket, let's say, and they can ask you, okay, what's the score right now? Okay, right? Or did you watch the match yesterday? What was the turning point in the match? Which areas, which you felt that, okay, this is the time that the match changed last time around. Let's say India versus England, second one day. Which area would be, the time at which you felt as if the things changed altogether. Okay, so this obviously has to be, very well prepared. As I've said, 30 questions at a minimum for your hobbies, whatever that hobby might be. It can be as much, somebody says, I'm very lazy, sleeping is my hobby. Okay, I said that's totally fine, but you better be ready for a lot of questions there as well. So what time do you sleep? What time do you wake up? Is there an optimum time? Have you noted that, okay, if I sleep at this time, I will sleep more in a better way? What is the best posture for sleeping? So and so. So the questions can be asked from anything. Don't think you can actually get away with anything, right? And obviously, at the end of the day, this is the last area. This is something that you should not be conscious about. I think this time you should be confident and be willing to talk about things and prepare them. Right? At the end of the day, if you prepare more, you'll obviously be able to talk in a better way. But at the end of the day, I do want to talk about the fact that it's okay if you say, I don't know. It is totally fine if you say that. Okay. With that, if if there are not any questions, I think we are done, and we can take your questions offline if there aren't any. Right?